Welcome to part 2, where we'll configure OSPF, multi-chassis lag and VSX synchronization, amongst other things. If you'd like to know how to configure VSX from scratch, please see part 1 of this series. The next slides will give you a recap of the topology we'll be working with from both the physical and logical perspective. Now that we're back, I have 3 terminal sessions open for the 2 switches in the VSX pair and the switch mimicking the host. The first thing we'll do is create an OSPF instance on both aggregation switch 1 and aggregation switch 2. Remember, the control planes are separate for each switch in the VSX pair. So let's configure the router OSPF process on aggregation switch 1. So we've given it a router ID, redistributed the connected interfaces, set passive interface to default, set up area 0 and enable that process. We'll do exactly the same thing on aggregation switch 2, apart from the router ID will be 2222. Now let's create a couple of loopback interfaces. So interface loopback 1, we'll give this a description of route ID. This will also be used for testing. We'll give it an IP address of 1.1.1.1/32 and we'll associate this with area 0. Do the same thing on aggregation switch 2. Next we'll create VLAN 10, which will be used across the ISL link to provide a point-to-point OSPF connection, and I'll show you a cool trick we can do to make things easier. So when we create the layer 2 VLAN on the primary VSX switch, we'll give it a name, OSPF, and if we head over to aggregation switch 2 and do a show VLAN, you'll notice only the default VLAN is available. However, if we apply the command VSX sync, what we'll find is if we run that command again on aggregation switch 2, the layer 2 VLAN has automatically synced along with the name. So now we'll go into the layer 3 interface for VLAN 10 and we'll just give that a description, give that an IP address, /30. We'll associate that with area 0. We'll apply the command OSPF passive. If you remember back when we were creating the OSPF process, we enabled the command passive interface default, which makes all interfaces on this switch to not participate in OSPF actively. This command takes that out, and lastly what we'll do is we'll make that a point-to-point network. We'll do the same thing on aggregation switch 2 and we'll just perform a no shutdown on. Now perform some verification commands. So we'll just check that OSPF has come up by running the command show IP OSPF neighbors, and we should see neighbor ID 2222, state is full. And if we do the same on switch 2, we should see 1111. If we have a look at the routing table, we should see the loopback interface on aggregation switch 2 being advertised using OSPF, and we should be able to ping that. Now we'll create VLAN 20 called employee and we'll set up active gateway on this VLAN. Let's go ahead and do that. The name. We'll use VSX sync again. So it's made available on aggregation switch 2. There we go. Go into the layer 3 interface, give it a description. We'll give it an IP address, and we'll use the command active gateway IP 172.17.0.1, and we'll give it the following MAC address. Just make sure that MAC address is not being used anywhere else on your network. We'll associate that with OSPF's area 0, and we'll perform a no shutdown. We'll do the same thing on aggregation switch 2. Now we'll create a multi-chassis lag to go down to the host switch. So we create an interface lag 20 and ensure that you put this command in, multi-chassis, description linked to the host, no shutdown, no routing, because it's layer 2. Allowed that new VLAN that we just created and set it as LACP mode active. We'll do the same thing on aggregation switch 2, and we'll associate interface 113 with that multi-chassis lag, and the same on aggregation switch 2. We'll go over to the host switch, create VLAN 20. We'll create a lag, associate interfaces 113, and we'll just perform a verification command. So 114 and 113 are associated with lag 20, and show LACP interfaces, and we can see everything's up. Last thing we'll do is we'll just create a static route to 172.17.0.1 so we can ping the loopback interfaces, and we'll also create a layer 3 VLAN and just give it an IP address 172.17.0.10/24. Do no shutdown. So this will actually mimic the host. Now we can ping aggregation switch 1, the interface. We can ping the gateway, and we should be able to ping the loopback interfaces, both switches. And if we look at the MAC address table, we should be able to see the MAC address of the individual switches and the active gateway MAC address. Finally, I'd like to show you some VSX synchronization commands. We already saw the synchronization of layer 2. However, there's quite a few other synchronization commands that you can run. Bear in mind that most of these are global. So if we went into VLAN 20 and say we wanted to create a helper address, IP helper address, say 2020, what we'll notice is it's not available on the secondary switch. However, if we went into VSX mode and we ran the command VSX sync DHCP relay, what we'll see is if we run that command on the aggregation switch now, we'll be able to see the helper address synchronized. We can also do that for, say, OSPF. So if we went into router OSPF 1 and we created area 1, shall run OSPF, we'll notice that only area 0 is available on aggregation switch 2. So if we went back into VSX mode and we did VSX sync OSPF, hit enter, and then we run that command again, be able to see the OSPF area is synchronized. We can do the same thing for access control lists and many other protocols. There's quite a few here. I hope you guys enjoyed the video. Please remember to like, subscribe and hit the bell icon for more upcoming content.